Hey guys, hopefully we have earlier today we did the intro in class, and today or tonight we are going to do the first part of sensory neurons. Um, and we'll try and get this done quickly as it's halftime of this football game just started, and we'll try and get it done before halftime ends. So we'll see how that works. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and get started. First thing we want to talk about is sensory neurons. These are also known as afferent. I think I put both terms on your term list. These essentially are one-way streets that carry information from the sense organs towards the brain. So eyes, ears, nose, mouth, touch, or eyes, ears, nose, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, pain, vestibular senses, all those things use afferent neurons or sensory neurons, and that carries the information from whatever organ that's sending the information to the brain. It is one way. Those are sensory neurons. The next ones are motor neurons or efferent neurons. These form messages that go away from the brain. All right, so afferent go to the brain, efferent go away from the brain. And generally those are to muscles, organs, and glands. So again, afferent to the brain, efferent away from the brain. And this is something to make sure you know is that sensory and motor neurons do not talk to each other directly. All right, and they one goes to the brain, the other one goes to the rest of the body. They do not talk directly, and they rely on a middleman. Interneurons, which make up the majority of our neurons, relay messages from sensory to other interneurons or motor neurons in complex pathways. So think about this. An example would be you grabbing something hot. Okay? You pull away from that without even thinking, oh man, that is hot. It's hurting me. I'm going to let go. All right, it's automatic. Usually when that happens, the things that happen when you don't think about it, instead of going from the touch, or I'm sorry, the pain receptors to the brain and then back to your muscles to move, that actually goes through the interneurons. We react automatically, and that's a good way to remember that. You know, think about grabbing a hot pot off of a stove or things like that. And the neurons each have there are three main tasks for a neuron. All right, the first thing it has to do is receive information from the neurons that feed it. All right, so there are neurons that create stimulation, and then there are neurons that will carry that signal to the next neuron. So the first thing it does is receive information. It then carries it down its length and then into the terminals, to which it then passes on to the next neurons. Each one of these little terminal will connect to a dendrite of another neuron. So you got to think, each one of these is connected to another one. So you can start to see how complex that neurons can be, and there are neural pathways and the neural networks. If each one of these has a neuron connected to it, or one of the dendrites, and one of these has one of these, and each one of these has a terminal branch connected to one of these, they can be real dense, and there's a lot that's going to happen. I'm not sure the point of that. how do they work, right? So we will have to know the different parts of neurons. So we'll start with this. We'll do some work actually mapping them out and memorizing which part is which. But essentially, dendrites complete their job. These are these here. This is the sort of the first part. This is, if you've got a message coming in, the first thing it's going to do is enter through the dendrites. They receive the messages from the other cells, and they pass that message into the central part of the neuron called the soma. All right. The soma or cell body contains the cell's nucleus and life support machinery. You all know from bioscience, the nucleus is sort of the brain of the cell and make sure everything stays alive. So comes in here, enters the soma where the nucleus is. And then that soma, the nucleus sort of assesses that information. And it decides whether it needs to send it on or which way it needs to send it. Because like you see, you've got a whole bunch of different pathways. I'm pointing at the thing, and I know you all can't see it. I kind of use the pointer. There's a whole bunch of different pathways that this thing can go through. So when it comes in, boom, it hits the nucleus, and then the cell body, and then it decides where it's going to go once it gets down through here. When the soma decides to pass on the message, it sends it down the axon. That is, again, this part here. And it's the axon is it's sort of a larger transmitter. These are smaller. They receive the messages, and then boom, it hits here. If you know anything about electricity, you know that the bigger the wire, the more stuff you can send. And essentially, it's what's happening here. So you get the message here. It goes in. Yes, it's decided it's going to send it, so it sends it through the axon. Again, this is a one-way street, so the signal can only go in one way. It does not go in reverse. Axon is the extension of the neuron through which neural impulses are sent. Again, we just talked about that. It's this area here. In some neurons, like those in the brain, the axons are very short. In others, like the ones in the leg, they can reach 3 feet long. All right, so, and why might that be? All right, why would the ones in the brain need to be really short versus the ones in the legs? Why can they be really long? I'll let you all think about that for a moment. And this is essentially what a neuron looks like. This is sort of reversed in what we've been looking at. But here are your dendrites, and you can see each one of these will connect. I say connect; they don't actually touch. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but will be connected somewhat to another neuron. So let's say I stub my toe. All right, that pain signal will be sent from whatever is upstream. Boom, it hits this dendrite, goes into the cell body. The nucleus decides, you know what, yes, I want to send this, or no, I don't. All right, well, if I stub my toe, generally that's my body saying, you know what, you've done something that's kind of dumb and you need to know about it. So it goes through, nucleus decides, yes, I'm going to send this on, and then it enters the axon. So this right here is going to be helpful. And if I was you, I'd go ahead and sort of write down the timestamp of this slide because it gives you, you will need to know all of these. Couple things that I'm going to point out. Well, I'll go ahead and point all of them out. Myelin sheath is insulation, and it's sort of a fatty layer that insulates the axon. again, if you know something, if you know anything about electricity, you know that the more insulation on let's use an extension cord, for instance, the better the electrical transmission is going to be. It's going to go smoother, it's going to go faster, it's not going to build up as much heat. So the more insulation, the better. And the myelin sheath is essentially an insulation for the axon. It makes the signal go much quicker. The area between each myelin sheath piece is called the node of Ranvier. These cells that actually make the myelin or the myelin sheath are called Schwann cells, and I'm guessing that's the guy who discovered them. His name was Schwann, and scientists like to name things after themselves, and so this guy he found these and decided to name them Schwann cells. But these things make the myelin or the insulation cells that insulate the axon. And then at the end of the trip, at least at this point, is the axon terminals. These are the transmitters. So it goes from, the pain signal comes in here, hits nucleus. Nucleus says, Coach Driver, you're an idiot for stubbing your toe. I want you to know about it, so I'm going to send it on through. It goes through real quickly because there's a lot of myelin here and hits what's called the axon terminal. And these will transmit that on to the next cell. And it's in a rough way, that's pretty much how a neuron works. So again, here's sort of the same thing. It's flipped back to what it was, into the dendrite, through the cell body, nucleus, hits the axon, and the myelin sheath and Schwann cell, and then out through the axon terminal. You will have to know this process. All right? Dendrite, cell body, nucleus, axon terminal. Dendrite, or the receiver part of the neuron, accepts the messages of incoming. They are finely branched fibers, and they are selectively permeable, meaning there are some signals that they do not receive. This one may receive pain, this one may receive temperature, this one. So it depends on what the signal is as it's moving through, whether it decides to send it or not. And there's that. So that's all we're going to do for tonight. We'll do the second part of this one probably tomorrow night. So keep up. Make sure you do your reading. Make sure you are writing notes on this. Make sure you're doing your terms. So it's the good thing about doing the terms that hopefully you have an idea of what we're already talking about by the time I get to it. So I think I'm doing pretty good because the halftime is about over. We'll see you all tomorrow. Peace.